Why would an American want to move to the UK? Well, I'm going to give you a surprising reason. That is the climate here. I know, right? So, have you heard of the Great Climate Migration? I recently read an article in the New York Times which said Americans are picking up and moving to avoid the effects of climate change. And according to Forbes, a third of Americans are thinking of moving with climate change as a motivator. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those folks lived through Hurricane Ian last year in Florida. So, have you ever thought about moving out of the US to avoid the more dramatic effects of climate change? Then here's why, as an American, you may want to consider moving here to the UK or at least spending more time here. So, hi, I'm Tessa with hipover50.com, and I talk about living your best life, keeping a positive mindset over 50, and what it's like moving to England in midlife. So, let's see what you could expect if you move to England, for example. Is the climate really better here? I mean, we hear so many bad things about the English weather. Let me give you the actual statistics. So, hands down, England seems to have much better air quality than the US. So, for example, in London yesterday, the air quality was 2, which is almost zero or zero air pollution. That's pretty amazing. That kind of surprised me, actually. I checked Fort Worth, Texas, where I used to live, and Boston, Massachusetts, where I used to live. And those were both around 50, which says it's moderate air pollution, but it does sound quite a bit higher, doesn't it? And I think if you have any kind of, lung-related issues, asthma, or breathing problems, the air quality is probably pretty important to you. So that's something to consider. I'm actually surprised the air quality here is so good, but maybe all of that wind and rain clears it out. Who knows? The UK climate also isn't as prone to natural disasters as the US. So, those hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, forest fires that seem to be happening more frequently every year. Well, here is the actual statistics. So, are there earthquakes in the UK? I was really surprised to find out that there's a category 4 earthquake here every 2 years. That is surprising because I've never heard of one. I'm sure somebody will correct me, but apparently they happen mainly on the west coast of the mainland. So I probably ought to think about moving. But by contrast, in the US, in Southern California alone, in a year, there are about 10,000 earthquakes, with 15 to 20 that are greater than a category 4. Wow, that's Southern California, not even the whole state. So if you've seen that disaster movie with The Rock in it, the one I'm talking about, San Andreas, it's starting to seem like it's not quite so much of a fiction and a Hollywood production as, yeah, this could actually happen. Of course, I think we all think, the big one is probably more likely to happen in Northern California, but the whole state is crisscrossed with fault lines. And don't get me wrong, I realize there are earthquake zones all over the world, but we're talking about kind of the US to the UK comparison here. So I don't think I would feel comfortable. That would freak me out if the ground started moving. I don't think I'd be comfortable with that. So the next thing is tornadoes. Okay, I did live in an area of the country in the US called Tornado Alley. And of course, if you saw the news this past week, those poor people in Mississippi just got hammered. Do they have any tornadoes in the UK? Well, apparently there's about 30 tornadoes per year. Again, I've never heard any or seen anything on the news. They must be under the radar. But how many in the US? 1,200 tornadoes per year. That is just incredible. And I'm not surprised at that really, but that's an incredible number. So, of course, there's a wide range of climate zones in the US, and not all are prone to earthquakes or tornadoes, but they may be prone to hurricanes and blizzards or snow. For example, in 2020, there were 300 tropical Atlantic cyclones noted in the US. And this can cause hurricane-type force winds all over the country. I mean, we've heard of hurricanes moving from Florida all the way up to Maine and devastating the coast on the way. And sometimes those hurricanes even decide to cross the Atlantic and come over here. But there were, 10 named storms is the average for each season, but there were 14 named storms last year in 2022. And of course, the big guy, Ian, was the most devastating one. They name it when it starts getting serious. But what about in the UK? Are there any hurricanes or tropical storms here? Well, no, that's the good news because even though we have the Gulf Stream that moderates our, surface air temperatures, the water is just too darn cold off the coast of England and the UK to create any hurricanes or tropical cyclones. So that is the good news about living in a far north latitude. So what about blizzards or snow? I mean, we surely get blizzards and snow here, right? I mean, you've heard I was here for the Beast from the East, and it was predominantly cold weather and wind, not a lot of snow. I had to search. I couldn't find an average snowfall in the UK. All I could come up with is the average of 24 days of snow predicted with snow or sleet, most of which never accumulates. And that's the reason why there's only a handful of ski or snowboard resorts here, because there just isn't enough snow. Now, if you live in Scotland, you're probably going to disagree with me and say, hey, we get plenty of snow up here. But I'm just telling you what the statistics say. 24 days of snow or sleet, which don't really accumulate. On the other hand, of course, in the US, the snow can be varied. I mean, obviously, Florida may get a dusting once in a blue moon, Hawaii, nothing. But then there's states like Vermont, which get an average of 90 inches per year. And not too far behind it is Colorado, where I also live, that get about 70 inches a year. And that's why there's such great ski resort states. We have also the outliers like Alaska and the Sierra Nevadas in California, the mountain range. They can get easily 200 plus inches of snow in a year. I mean, I was in Boston during the blizzard of 78 and we got 27 inches. So that's kind of unheard of here. I think there was one freak storm in Lewis, and I can't even remember the year, but it was many, many decades ago. But that's really unusual to get any substantial snowfall here. So if you're a skier, then you probably won't want to live here, although you can hop over and ski in the Alps in Switzerland or in France. But if you don't like your snow or you only like it, to look at it and see a little pretty dusting, then you're going to love it here. So, of course, the one thing you can count on the UK beating the US on is rainfall. You knew that was coming, right? So the UK gets from 30 to 55 inches of rain a year, with the US only getting an average of 30 inches per year. And of course, again, that varies widely depending on what state you're in. I mean, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, you'll be lucky to get about 10 inches per year, whereas the Northeast and the Northwestern states will get 30 or more inches per year. So, yeah, you're probably wondering why I'm touting the UK climate, but actually, as you can see, it's pretty moderate. We don't really do natural disasters here. And so there is a silver lining to the cloud of getting all that rain. Because if you live in California with the daily threat of earthquakes and wildfires, or in Texas's Tornado Alley, as I did, it can be really scary. I mean, there's nothing spookier than the sound of a tornado siren going off. And then there's Florida, where the hurricane season runs from the 1st of June all the way through to the end of November. That's half the year where you could get hammered by a hurricane. I've been through many a tropical storm and a couple of hurricanes in Florida, one being Charlie. But none were as bad as last year's Ian, which apparently was the third costliest natural disaster on record. And I'm sure it caused a lot of folks to reconsider whether they want to continue to call Florida home. So there you go. Yes, we do get a lot of rain here, and it does affect daily life. But you know what? It's not that heavy driving rain. I mean, I've been through rainstorms in Texas where you couldn't even pull over in your car because you couldn't see where you were pulling over. So it's more likely a soft, gentle rain here. It doesn't really disrupt life. People still go about their business. And, it does have the side effect of keeping the grass green all year round. So if you're a golfer, you'll love it. And with an average high temperature of 55 degrees Fahrenheit, you won't have to worry about breaking a sweat while you're doing it. So if you live in a state prone to natural disasters or extreme weather, I think the air quality and the climate here make a compelling reason to consider living here part-time or full-time. So there you go. If you have any comments, I'd love to see them. And of course, if you want to like and subscribe, that would be awesome too. I'm planning on making this a series, so please tune in and see the next one. And of course, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Bye for now.